That was all or nothing to Daigo.
Daigo, man, one of the best.
Daigo, the beast. Everything he does is correct in life and gameplay.
Correct.
Don't ever question the man. This man is a relic. He's a walking relic. He can't lose.
Daigo has finally been able to bring his style over to Evil Ryu and play in a much more controlled game, and at any moment he might pounce.
Oh no! Oh my lord!
Oh my goodness!
Daigo's the best!
Please! Daigo, please!
Tokyo, Japan. A city constantly on the forefront of gaming since the scene's inception. In 1991, it found itself hopelessly gripped by one of the most important titles in video game history, Street Fighter II. Street Fighter II was inescapable. Thousands of arcades nestled within Tokyo gave Japanese youths a chance to go head-to-head against the city's best and brightest fighters. One such hopeful was a 10-year-old child, Daigo Umehara. The game was the beginning of a storm that would dictate the lives of the country's youngest generation. Daigo wanted to be the best, but he wasn't alone with those ambitions. In each and every arcade, up and down the land, dozens of players lingered around any cabinet they could find, waiting for their chance to fight, even if they had to queue up all day. Daigo didn't want to wait, he wanted to play, to improve, to refine his skills. Pushed out of line by older kids, the young boy settled for something else instead: Fatal Fury. Here he could learn how fighters worked in general and hone his game sense and mechanics. When his chance to play Street Fighter II would finally arrive, he'd be ready. Fatal Fury proved itself a robust training ground. The young Daigo plucked up the courage to challenge those who had been denying him the chance to play Street Fighter. There were two realizations he'd soon have. Firstly, compared to practicing against the AI on Fatal Fury, he felt much more at home against human opponents. Secondly, up against players with dozens of hours more experience than him, Daigo realized he was good. Inherently, undeniably good. Despite his commitment to Street Fighter II, Daigo made the switch to the lesser-known Vampire Hunter at age 13. The young player was clearly adept, and his prowess caught the attention of all he came across. Countless challengers stepped up to the plate, but none could withstand him. Accepting all combatants, Daigo fought tooth and nail against anyone and everyone at the arcade, famously winning 286 games in a row. He was untouchable, indomitable, immovable, and ready to take these abilities further. He took part in his inaugural Vampire Hunter tournament in 1995, yet despite the prowess he had displayed so far, he was swiftly knocked out. However, those around him knew he was capable of much more. This wasn't the time to bow out and give up on those dreams. Instead, he pushed himself further, practiced to remedy his weaknesses, and continued to refine a playstyle that would better suit the competitive scene. It took 2 years, but in 1997, he was ready to return to the circuit, stronger, quicker, and more confident than ever. Daigo was now 16 years old and ready to start winning. Now with an extra edge to his game, he blew away his competition and took home the title at the same tournament he'd been knocked out of previously. The years of training had led to that first big win, but now it was time to return to an old friend. The Street Fighter scene was calling. "1998 marked a big year for the Street Fighter franchise. Capcom were looking for the best fighters in the world to compete in their official 0-3 tournament, and this, of course, caught Daigo's attention. After tearing through the best that Japan had to offer, he was set to fight the best in America, battled by the Bay champion, Alex Valle. This international clash of titans marked the first time Daigo had travelled to the US, his first tournament away from home soil, and the first chance for fighting game fans around the world to catch a glimpse of this Japanese powerhouse in action. Valle was the first American to ever face Daigo in what was one of the most anticipated fights in Street Fighter history. The scene may have been born in Japan, but Valle represented the Stars and Stripes, and he had his entire region behind him. Valle may have reigned over the American circuit, but he wasn't ready for the fury Daigo brought to the stage. In the deciding match, the crowd was behind our hometown hero, but this wouldn't faze Daigo. He was about to become the Beast, and Valle would be his prey. Valle was outmatched and outclassed when it mattered. Daigo, on foreign soil, in unknown territory, had left an impression, one which would only continue to grow with each tournament he entered. Early whispers of this indomitable Ryu player circled round the FGC, and soon, tales of the beast tearing through his opponents were the talk of the town. This prompted the star to release a small autobiography titled Versus, charting his path to fighting game notoriety. He, and he alone, was the final challenge within the scene, a declaration of ultimate skill. At the turn of the millennium, the popularity of fighting games was growing globally, and tournaments were getting bigger, more lucrative, and boasting a higher caliber of players. But one American event was about to rise above them all, and present itself as the mecca of the competitive fighting game circuit. EVO. Coming into 2003, Daigo was ready to prove his utter dominance over the circuit. It was his first time at EVO, and he would provide a debut that would be remembered for years to come. Daigo cleaned up the competition, taking the titles for both Street Fighter II and Guilty Gear. Back on home soil, he won the inaugural Super Battle Opera, cementing his position at the top of both the Japanese and American circuits. Amazingly, this rise would only continue, and the following year he did something the FGC and esports world would never forget. Cue EVO 2004. Coming into the tournament, the crowds were excited for one match in particular: Daigo versus Justin Wong. This early possibility grew by word of mouth until a feigned rivalry was formed, a rivalry which Daigo and Wong were oblivious to. There was no bad blood between them. In fact, they'd never played against each other, but the matchup was blown up for one particular reason. Both Daigo and Wong were at the top of their field with their respective characters. However, they were polar opposites in playstyle and game philosophy. Daigo was brash and flashy. His technical skill and timings were impeccable. He made high-risk, high-reward plays. Wong was much more defensive, frustrating his opponents by turtling, then punishing their advances and misplays with expert precision and timing. The two shared one common factor, however. They were both exceptional at getting inside their opponent's head. Eventually, the scene got what they desired. Daigo and Wong met in the losers bracket finals. The match would be remembered throughout all of esports history. Wong's defensive philosophy was prevailing, and Daigo was getting severely punished. Every gambit was countered. At the end of round 3, he retreated with only 1 pixel of health, but then the mind games started. They both knew a single block due to chip damage would finish the fight, but if Daigo were to somehow call the shots, he had a chance. So he tried one last Hail Mary. Wong was playing in front of a home crowd. He was dominating the best player in the world. Daigo knew his opponent couldn't resist the temptation to finish the match in a glorious, flashy manner, utilizing Chun-Li's super art. So Daigo laid the bait, and his opponent snatched it up. Every single hit had to be parried in a fraction of a second to be successful. Daigo did this 15 times in a row. One wrong timing meant death. Justin had already committed to chipping him out, but he couldn't have predicted Daigo would be this ready to counter. He converted into a 12-hit combo of his own for the win. It was unheard of, unbelievably devastating, utterly perfect, the pinnacle of Street Fighter. This was flawless timing meeting impeccable resolve, and a series of mind games that turned the bout completely on its head from seemingly certain defeat. This wasn't just the apex of fighting games. This transcended even that. It became one of the most iconic moments in all of esports. Daigo may not have gone on to win that tournament, but he did something that far surpasses it. Decades on, people don't always remember who won what event. They talk instead about the specific moments within a tournament, and the few players that can pull off something so utterly spellbinding as the Daigo parry. In that moment, Daigo had surpassed all previous conceptions of himself. He'd become a legend. This was no fairy tale. Over the next decade, he'd continue to dominate tournaments across the globe. With each new game release, he'd study, learn, improve, and decimate his opponents. He'd take home dozens of the most prestigious titles in the FGC, including a staggering 6 championship wins at EVO. To call Daigo's career accolades impressive is an understatement. He holds a world record for the most successful and decorated fighting games player. Yet, even as he stands among the greatest to ever play their respective game as one of the 5 gods of fighting games, there's something else that sets him apart. It's not always about winning. He's been around for it all, from the birth of the FGC until now, playing every iteration, dominating countless tournaments, and making a name for himself all around the world. Yet, even now, over 2.5 decades since his debut, he still competes at the highest level, going head-to-head with the newest hopefuls. Younger generations have started to surpass him, but still he keeps playing. It's not about winning. Every defeat to Daigo is a lesson. A reminder that there's still always more to learn. He represents something so poignant within the FGC, an iconic character who's known across the world, but looking to pass on the torch. Players he faced a decade ago may have given up the dream of being a fighting game star, yet these new opponents may have what it takes. If beating the beast is what drives them to strive further, to aim higher, then he's there to give them the obstacle they may not even have known they needed to act as their driving force. Daigo has always been and will continue to be a legend within the FGC. It isn't about how good he once was or what he's achieved, but how he holds himself in the present. With this, one thing is abundantly clear. Even today, there's still a fire within Daigo, something that keeps pushing him. Hopefully, that fire will never die down.